Welcome back to another episode of the Show Me the Data podcast, where we have Fernando from Xeneta, who's going to walk us through how he was able to build out a completely automated prospecting engine. Fernando, welcome to the show.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So why don't we dig right in? Walk us through, and getting to completely automated prospecting is kind of a big goal. Walk us through what your initial goal was when you started out with the campaign.
Yeah, sure. Just to give a little, initial insight on the company itself. So I am the director of demand generation at Xeneta. Xeneta is a crowdsourced freight rate platform. So we cater to the ocean and air freight industry, and there I lead a team of like super talented marketers, account development managers, and demand generation specialists. So at the start of this year, we sat down. Our team was newly formed, and we're a relatively small team. So we sat down and decided, okay, how can we, just hit all our LKRs and hit all the goals that we have for this year with a relative small team. And now we're talking about the strategizing before COVID even hit. So there was even more limitations on resources and budgets that we could allocate to these things. So we sat down and we thought, okay, how can we like be a small team, but make our impact feel like we're a larger team? And automations was the natural thing to talk about. So we sat down and we concocted a plan on how to just leverage different channels, automate every single step of it. And yeah, happy to talk about the details today.
Cool. And just so we know kind of the transition from the beginning of the year, was it all manual prior to that point? There was very little automation built out before you transitioned into this new program. Is that fair?
Yeah. The majority of the automation was probably like, we were testing some machine learning tools to automate the actual like the data crunching in order to have a deep dive into all the data that we gathered and make some data-driven decisions out of it. So it was mostly the analytical aspect of it, but not the actual operational part of it.
Cool. And so as you started out and you were building out the audience, walk us through what kind of cohorts, how you just determined who you're going to target, what that criteria looked like.
Yeah, so it's a two-folded strategy. So obviously we discussed this together with the sales department, and they have their top 100 accounts listed, and we support them by going through all the accounts and trying to find 5 to 6 decision makers within each account that are ICP fit, and include them in the campaigns that we start. So you can do the math, right? Like it's 100 account list, 5-6 decision makers from each. You get an idea of how large that list is. So that's more of like the pure ABM language, more of the harpooning strategy. But we also, parallel to that, we have more of a netting strategy. So we basically do job titles, verticals, geolocation. Those 3 criteria, we basically go to Sales Navigator list, and then we see how that list look like and take it from there. That's kind of like the foundation of all the automations that comes into place later. So we're very strict with the criteria, making sure that no non-ICP prospects gets included, because obviously when you automate the process from start to finish, if you even have 1, 2, 5 prospects out of the whole list that is not fit, then they will get weird messages and at a weird time that is not going to equate into a good ROI. So yeah, that's basically how we fold it into using the harpooning and limit strategy.
And just from a segmentation perspective, what was the main targeting criteria that you looked at to determine different messaging? Was it job title, industry, or location even? Like, walk us through a little bit of that segmentation.
Yeah, so for each vertical, the job titles are all the same. So from like a day-to-day operational standpoint, the pain points for those processes are basically pretty much the same. Like if you're a procurement manager, you're doing a lot of same things from any other procurement manager does in any other company. But the vertical has its own specific challenges, and we want to make sure that we mention that in the outreach. Seniority, company size, because both the listed, the named accounts and the non-named accounts, they're all enterprise. So company size has has something to do with it, and the vertical and the geolocation is part of it. We don't necessarily mention geolocation. That was perhaps something that was more important during some geographies was harder hit than others at a specific time. I mean, Europe may be the first, and then now the US currently. But the vertical is really the thing that separates the same job titles. They definitely have different issues, different challenges, and we want to make sure we address that when we reach out to them.
Got it. And so as you're reaching out, what channels were the primary drivers for the campaign?
So the primary channels are the ones that we believe we have the most control over. So email and LinkedIn is where you can actually target as deep as possible. So we leverage those two in the beginning, and we leverage also some tools that can kind of reach out to these prospects at the same time, making us, take a more omnipresent approach. So we use one tool called Phantom Buster for this. It's a no-code automation platform. I think they're based out in Paris, France. And what Phantom Buster does is, once you have your Sales Navigator list already created, you connect that with the Phantom Buster, and you scrape all the information from those lists. And then you take that information into an automated LinkedIn outreach. So basically, it takes these prospects' LinkedIn profile URL, adds them with an invitation. Usual stuff. The cool thing about this particular automation is that at the same time that you go to that profile, visit the profile, add them, and give them the introductory note, it scrapes the email as well, because they have connected to these data enrichment, content information enrichment companies. I think they're called Drop Contact. So their integration with Drop Contact takes the email as well, the professional email, validates it and gives it back to you. So we have, continuing the automations. When we do get that email, at the same time we connect on LinkedIn, we send that email to our CRM, which is HubSpot. Mm-hmm. And then once that email gets sent to a list, then we have a bunch of sequences and email templates in place to shoot off emails at the same time. So I can program this outreach to be from one of my team members through LinkedIn, and then they get an email from another team member. So they don't feel like the same message from the same person is just hitting them from two channels, but actually more of a whole customer experience where they get outreach from different channels, different persons saying different things at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. So one of the interesting things, I think, it comes down to the amount of times that you're actually reaching out to prospects as you put them into lists. So how many touch points over, I guess, what time period are you typically engaging with these folks? And you mentioned that they're coming from different people, and is that consistent throughout that whole duration of time that you're engaging?
Yeah, it is. So touch points, I would say about 30 in 30 days. And that might sound a little bit aggressive, but it's not, because we have different channels involved. So they don't really get 30 from the same channel. So we have email and LinkedIn outreach first, like I said, from two different people. But then we also pull in SDRs that come in a little bit later on to help out. And they can also do like a voicemail, they can do a call, they can do text. So we have 30 days to basically take a lead to an SQL. And the system that we have put in place basically gives us 10 days to take a lead to an MQL. So in those 10 days, those initial 10 days, they get a combination of email and LinkedIn. Then when they do become an MQL and they start engaging with the different assets that we are offering them, we have lead scoring put in place as well. So this can be anything from a returned visitor, and then they get a different score depending on which landing page they click on. And obviously if they sign up for other assets, they get a higher score. Once they surpass just an arbitrary number that we have put 12 as our number. Once they pass a lead score of 12 MQL, we connect once a week with our SDRs and we inform them, okay, these are the people who are MQL plus 12. Okay, let's connect on what we will say and what the messaging will be. So we inform them of the other emails further down in the sequence that we have planned and what they are going to tell and offer. And then we also get a insight from the SDRs what they are going to strategize and the tactics that they're going to implement. So we get like a pure alignment between marketing and sales in that particular step, and that is the step right before they do become an SQL and start booking meetings, and then we do the official handover to sales from that point. So that is 20 days. So that's kind of like the whole system from start to finish, from lead to SQL within 30 days.
That's awesome. And so I guess there's two questions here. One, and you mentioned this from the alignment with the SDR and demand gen. Just a quick one. Does SDR fall under demand gen or do they fall under sales?
No, they fall under sales, but they're slowly becoming demand gen. I'm like my plan, my secret plan, and the people in my company will hear it now for the first time, is to just slowly convert them into demand gen marketers.
Cool. I like it. And then the other side of it is from a recycle perspective. So are you assuming that within the 30 days, the ones that aren't booking a meeting, and we can get into kind of the conversion metrics in a moment, the ones that aren't booking a meeting, what's kind of the recycling or the, what happens to them after they don't convert?
It's very ad hoc, and these meetings that we have put in place to kind of like synchronize for all those is the perfect opportunity for us to just be super transparent and open about what really happened and what was the reason they got disqualified, or why that particular prospect didn't go further down in the funnel. So it's a little bit hard to generalize it, but on average, they are either put on hold for a set amount of time, or they are put back in the nurturing sequence where marketing basically takes over and just continue to offer them assets that are valuable to them. So what's really particular about the ocean freight industry, where Xeneta is part of, is that transparency has never been a thing. So people really appreciate being being informed of market movements and stuff like that. So our marketing assets really bring a good value for them, even though they're not ready to buy yet. So usually we put them in a nurture campaign where we offer stuff like webinars, weekly updates, all video content that is very easy to digest, and won't seem too intrusive for them, even though they do remain in our CRM. But of course, if there's absolutely no traction for a longer time period, we just don't bother. We got to do data cleanup in our CRM from time to time, so there's always some prospects that will be deleted and not worked on for anymore. But that's usually a very long time frame, like a year or something, after absolutely no action.
Fair. Okay. So we get the idea, kind of 30 touch points in 30 days, and hopefully at that point they're turning into an SQL, getting passed over to sales for further qualification and eventually close one revenue. Walk us through the conversion rates that you're seeing. So from MQL or lead, I guess, to MQL to SQL, what do those numbers look like?
Yeah, the percentage right now from lead to MQL is between 5 and 10%, and it cascades. So when they do become MQL to SQL, the conversion rate is 20% there. But obviously, it's a funnel. People get filtered out, so those 20% become a very, very important number for us, because at that point they should be like super duper qualified. Like they should have a high lead scoring as well, and then the probability of them actually becoming a customer becomes very high. So 5% lead to MQL, 20% MQL to SQL is what I would say. Okay,
cool. And 30 touch points in 30 days, and I know we keep kind of honing in on that, but what touch point, at what point are most people converting for you? What's the highest point in that 30-day cycle where you see the most action happening?
And this is kind of like the most exciting part in analyzing the data, because there's so many touch points, right? And so many different prospects, different channels, and we're being omnipresent. So we're being present at the same time throughout all of them. So it can become quite a maze to navigate throughout the different data points and try to like see some patterns and see some trends and try to identify that. But I would say like the third touch point is the highest converting for prospects in the lead lifecycle stage. So usually, the very first intro email, the second, the follow up to that, just like yes, we do get some traction, of course, but the majority comes at the third touch point. And we're talking about like higher open rates, higher click rates, higher reply rates on the third touch point. So that's very interesting. But then for MQLs, and that also depends a little bit on like the lead scoring. So if they are like on the lower end of the lead scoring MQL, is very different from those that are above the 12 threshold that I mentioned. But I would say on average, for those who are MQLs going to SQLs, there are about 10 minimum touch points.
Oh, wow.
10 plus touch points, but no real winner. And I would basically say that it's closer to 20 than 10 on average. So you got to be persistent. You got to really try and not give up too hard. It's also important to not necessarily be super hard on yourself on the content and the assets that you share. You never really know. It's asymmetric, right? So you don't really know what's happening on the other side. So maybe your email is just being sent at the wrong time, and you just need to send it again in order to get a response. So yeah, we're being very active on having a lot of touch points because as we can tell, the engagement comes much later on than what you might usually read on different case studies and different blogs.
And just to one point of clarification is when we talk about, let's say 10 to 20 touch point in that range, probably higher towards the 20, are we thinking about that at an account level, or are we thinking about that on individual basis that are turning into meetings?
Yeah, no, that's a good distinction. Individual basis.
Okay. So there could be those touch points, if you were to look at an account level, could be, given the depth of the account that you're going after with 5 to 7 contacts, could be much higher when you look and you aggregate that data.
Yeah, definitely, it gets multiplied for sure.
Okay, cool. So basically, if we were to start at a lead, 20%, or I guess 5% will go to MQL, 20% will ultimately turn to SQL. Walk us through the costs typically associated with generating a new meeting for you.
So talking about this specific strategy, right? So basically, all of this is organic. There's no paid ads involved in this whatsoever. So there's really the cost of the tools, the combined, the tools here are like Phantom Buster, as I mentioned. We got HubSpot, we got Salesforce, we have premium LinkedIn profiles, right? So it's really the aggregate cost of those tools, but then also you got to also combine the salary of all the people that are in the team, right? So you put all of that together as your cost. And I can't really talk too much about neither, especially not the combined salary. So I can't really give you like a CAC for that because it's confidential. Yeah, can't really give you a number there. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's fair. So, but really, I think the core to pull out of that is that it is all organic driven in this instance, right? There's not paid media being spent on the side to try and boost this. The organic traffic is just in the tools and the setup, and understanding that the salaries and things of that nature will vary and are confidential. The key part of that is just think about the tools and the infrastructure, and that's largely the cost.
Yeah, and time is really the big driver here, and also the cost of opportunity of like, okay, if you were to do all of that manually, what other opportunities are you sacrificing in order to do that? So this fully automated from start to finish approach really enables us to have more freedom to be more creative and like really hone down on like the quality of the copywriting, on the emails, subject lines, being able to afford time to experiment with A/B testing, multivariate testing across landing pages, and just all across all our digital footprint. So I would say that is where the real ROI lives.
Absolutely. And I think without knowing the exact numbers, but talk us about the revenue that you've influenced with this campaign. And I would imagine that the ROI speaks for itself once we kind of dig into that number.
Yeah, so revenue influenced from our relatively very small team and the activities that we do so far this year is at $848K US dollars. So it's a really good number when you really think how few headcounts there is in the team, and the impact of what we're actually doing through these automation activities. So I would say the revenue influence is a very strong indicator on how successful this whole approach is.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very impressive. And again, just tying that back to when you think about organic and predominantly the biggest number is in ad spend and acquiring new customers outside of the employee salary, that organic traffic that you're able to generate or the organic interest through being more proactive and going outbound is fantastic.
Definitely. And it's also has a lot to do, it's a reflection of our target audience, right? Because what we are offering is very novel, and the industry as a whole historically don't really mess with SaaS platforms or too much digital things. It's mostly, you know, Excel sheets, faxes, still to this day, even though it might be, you know, it's crazy to hear that. So we are also dealing with an audience that needs to get educated about like the transition, the digital transformation, or whatever you want to call it, and into making this a habitual thing in their in the day-to-day work. So you're dealing with people who have worked decades in this industry and have done things a certain way, and if they see a paid ad with some snappy lines and maybe, you know, the copywriting is really good, it still won't resonate immediately with them. And it's not like there's other competitors and they already know like, okay, this is a solution and there's a landscape of competitors that I can research. It's pretty much one vendor here. So it's not like shopping for sneakers or washing machines where you know your need and you know who's out there and you can do a lot of research on your own. So direct contact channels like LinkedIn and email is very crucial for us because it's about opening a dialogue and having a conversation with these people and slowly convincing them about the value, and then implementing, you know, these hooks to lead them through the life cycle stage as we want them to go down the funnel, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. So Fernando, really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this information with us. If people want to connect and learn more and dig into how you've been able to automate this, what's the best way to engage?
Just contact me directly. You can just Google me, Fernando Nikolic, Nikolic. You can find me on Twitter. You can go to mindfold.co, which is my website that I'm putting up, where I put a lot of worksheets for marketing leaders who want to implement mental models within their team. You can also contact me through that webpage, and just ask me anything, because this whole setup of the automation is very, very complicated, and is, you know, maybe that's an hour, that's a 60-minute podcast in itself. So feel free to reach out on Twitter or on email, and I'll happily guide you through the whole process.
Awesome. Thanks, Fernando.
No worries. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed another unfluffy episode of the Show Me the Data podcast. If you want to become part of our community with other demand gen leaders and get exclusive access to Q&As with the guests we have on the show, click the link in the description of the podcast.